at least, Congressman Gary Palmer from Alabama's 6th District.
Dave gets on me all the time about not smiling much after hearing that. Do you know why? Okay, I'm going to be brief. Some of you know I ran a think tank for 25 years. I've worked with Matt for years. Because of some of a lot of what I've read that Matt's written, I have a very clear understanding of how our system's supposed to operate. And Barry touched on something about the unappropriated funds. So I'm just going to get to some ideas. Is this off the record, or is it going to be on Fox News tonight? Crap. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to fix my own crap sandwich. I'm introducing a bill that will prohibit any funds, unappropriated funds, from going to any federal agency. All of the funds will go into the general treasury. This is something I've been working on since I've gotten here. But they will be identified with the agency where they originated. And one of my biggest issues is with the Consumer Financial Protection Board that gets its funding, all of its funding, from the Fed. Congress loses all oversight. We completely lose the power of the purse when we allow agencies to collect unappropriated funds. So these funds in this bill will go to the general treasury, identified with the agency, and then it'll be up to the appropriating subcommittee's jurisdiction to appropriate that money back to them if they deem it's worth it. We've also got to change, in my opinion, how we appropriate, and I'm working on other legislation that right now, if this cup were an agency budget, it's like a silo. Come October 1st, we fill it up. They spend it through September 30th, and October 1st, we fill that thing up again. Well, we lose all ability to have any oversight control over the appropriation once it goes into the silo. When we try to walk it back, what do they say? You're shutting down the government. So what I'm recommending is that we change our appropriation process. We will appropriate an amount that will fill the silo, but we will give Treasury directions to only release a quarter of it at a time with instructions from Congress. And here's why. When the executive branch doesn't carry out the mandates of Congress, doesn't implement the laws that we pass, which, by the way, Matt, I think is part of the oath, isn't it, that he will faithfully execute the laws of Congress? If they don't do that, if an agency's not doing what they're supposed to do, we can, the next quarter, direct the Treasury to withhold, say, $50 million. That is not even a rounding error in the budget. It doesn't shut down the government, but it holds that agency accountable. If the next quarter they still haven't done what they're supposed to do, we can withhold 75 or 100 million. We can make it painful. They'd start laying off people. And frankly, I think we'd only have to do that 4 or 5 times before everybody would get the message, and it would restore congressional oversight over federal agencies. That's how you regain the power of the purse. The other issue that we don't talk about a lot is regulatory reform, and it is the secret path to appropriations. Federal agencies are making rules. They're implementing them to the tune of $2 trillion. That's what regulations cost our economy last year, was $2 trillion. That's $15,000 per household. We need to break down the regulatory reform process into component parts. If it's regulations related to community banks, we need to have a working group that's just focused on community banks with community bankers actually in the process, regulators under the oversight of Congress. Get rid of the obsolete, get rid of the duplications, get the regulations that we're going to keep, and simplify them so that the regulators actually understand what the regulations say themselves, because frankly, a lot of them don't. And it's killing business in the U.S., and it's a hidden cost. It's not a hidden tax. The tax actually goes to support some government program at some level. This doesn't support anything. And the impact that it's having on the economy is enormous. In 2008, there were 100,000 more businesses started up than closed. In 2013, there were 70,000 more businesses closed than started up. In terms of entrepreneurism, we rank 12th in the world now. We're behind Hungary. So we got to take that on, and that's part of Congress restoring its oversight authority. I think we've got to define agency jurisdictions better. I've got a bill stopping EPA overreach that declares that the EPA does not have the authority to regulate greenhouse gases. Okay? Most people are going to think this is a battle over climate change, okay, or over the Clean Power Plan. Maybe so, but what it's really about is reasserting congressional authority to make law. And I've urged my colleagues on other committees of jurisdiction to look at the agencies under their committees for examples of overstepping their authority and introduce a 2 or 3 page bill that simply says Congress never gave you that authority. So we've got to take back our lawmaking authority. We've also got to take responsibility for what we allow the agencies to do, and I think the RAINS Act is a key part of that. And I think most of you are familiar with it, but if you're not, it simply says that if any new rule from an agency that has an economic impact of plus or minus $100 million has to go to both houses of Congress and be passed and signed by the president. Those are just some ideas that I've thrown out there that I think make sense. I think we also ought to have, I'm working on legislation right now that on some tax issues and on how we do some budgeting. But I don't get some, I understand the philosophical basis for what we ought to be doing, but I think that we can talk to that till we're blue in the face and makes us look real smart and intelligent and all that crap. What we need to do is get out there with real solutions. And I think time is short. We got 10 years maybe to get this straightened out, or we're going to be right where my colleague Dave Bratt says we're heading. Thank you.
Thank you. I think